Hello and welcome to the Southeastern 14 Saturday night special. Got several SEC games to talk about, a few going as we're still doing this. But Blake, we were really looking forward to three games in particular coming into today. Not that we didn't want to watch all of them on some level, but three in particular were ones we had circled. I think that two of those delivered as much as you could have asked, and the other one was a pretty big letdown. But a very interesting day of SEC football nonetheless.
Yep. And if you're just jumping in here, guys, as always, if you want to give us a nice super chat, you can do that. That's probably going to be the best way to get your comments or questions answered on the Saturday night reaction edition, as usual. But yeah, if you want to reach out and sponsor, advertise this show or any other, caroline.smith at southeastern14.com. I'd say, Chris, we got our game rankings, right? We debated this on, what was it, Thursday. We said, how would you rank what we figured would be the top three games heading into it? And I mean, I said, I thought, if you had to rank them based on blowout potential, I thought Georgia Kentucky had the most blowout potential,
Yeah.
although maybe not to this level necessarily, but I did think it was there because, again, all you had to do was get Georgia, having a Georgia type game the way they've had tonight. And Kentucky still not been fully tested at this point. This was the first big game for them. And so, we wound up putting that third on our list, and we put LSU, Missouri second. And that was, as we said, not shockingly, a very high scoring game, back and forth, all that. And then, the best game, which, scoreline may be a little deceiving because Alabama had gone up 26-17 there against A&M. But yeah, I mean, what a interesting three games and big storylines coming out of all of them. So,
Yeah, take your pick. A&M, Alabama, and LSU, Missouri were wildly entertaining. That's what I'm trying to say. And the results aren't what I thought. I had A&M winning, and I had Missouri winning. Both home teams both lost. We did know about Kentucky, Georgia. That one we thought what we saw and are seeing is it's technically still going as we're watching this was a scenario. But yeah, I mean, I think the big thing, I guess the biggest surprise of the day to me was Alabama doing it the way that it did it, because last week Alabama went run, 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 run. You thought you were watching 1950s Alabama. It threw the ball so little. And you figured that was just going to be the recipe going forward. A&M's got a very, very talented pass defense. It can really get after the passer with its front seven. It did that, but Jalen Milroe had, like a bunch of career highs anyway, made some huge throws in that one. And I don't think we're shocked. We're certainly not shocked that Alabama won the game, but I think the way that it won it offensively was not the way we would have drawn it up. Now, that defense, which I've kind of said, hey, that's the storyline that maybe everybody is not sleeping on, but maybe not talking about enough, because it feels like sometimes you're watching a little bit of a vintage Alabama defense. And I feel like that's the defense that showed up today. You got a little bit of that on special teams with the block. I think it was by Chris Braswell. So that was part of it too. But yes, I think that the way that one happened, probably of all the things that happened today, that was probably the one thing that I circled the most is, all right, this is a little something to watch going forward that's pretty significant. Is that, you got anything better than that?
Well, I mean, I thought Alabama would have a tough time running the ball against A&M, and so I'm not exactly shocked that they went the route they went, because I think A&M was their top 25 rushing defense, numbers wise. But like you said, it's the secondary though, and it was going to be a challenge any way you looked at it. And I think that's why everyone, for the bettors out there, that line moved significantly in A&M's favor, all the way down to 2.5 or whatever it got to. Yeah, there was a lot of positive momentum towards thinking that this was kind of that turning point game for A&M to really, fully pronounce itself as back, right? Like officially back. This is the season where we can win the West, which again they still are there, but yeah, it's just Alabama. People count them out against Ole Miss, count them out in this game against Texas A&M, and they just they keep doing it outside of that Texas A&M game, or excuse me, that Texas game. They just keep finding ways to win, and they've done it. Here and on the road in a very hostile environment, toughest road game of the season so far, and yeah, they made it work with Milroe and Burton, and the defense, like you said, made big plays at multiple points in the game. I mean, that was just, and that's what you've always expected from the great Alabama teams, right? Is the defense always steps up and makes those huge plays at those critical moments. And they had a couple of those in this game, and probably more if you just kind of dive into certain down and distance scenarios. But yeah, so it was. Alabama's not going. Alabama's not going anywhere. I know we all wanted to count them out at times a couple weeks ago, but yeah, here they are at 5-1, and got a pretty nice schedule the rest of the way, Chris. And I'm not saying it's not hard, but when you think about it, right, their next 3 games are at home against Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU. Still got to go to Kentucky and Auburn, but yeah, I mean for the momentum wise, getting your next 3 games at home after these 3 performances in a row here, the win against Ole Miss, the win at Mississippi State, and now a really good win on the road against Texas A&M. So
yeah, a couple things here. I think the point that you brought about Alabama being home for a while, Alabama could make a lot of headway towards wrapping up the West by the time it hits the road next time. That LSU game will be a big one to circle again. I mean, like Tennessee, for that matter, too. Let's not discount that one. And I want to get to LSU in just a minute because I think if we were burying LSU, that was a mistake. But Jermaine Burton, I feel like that's a name that we haven't talked about in a long, long time. He had nearly 200 yards receiving today. Had that big touchdown catch where Milroe made a fantastic play with the pass rush closing in on him too. One criticism I've had of Alabama was I just didn't feel like that receiving room was up to the standard that we saw latter part of last decade, early part of this decade. And that's a historical standard, but that's also Alabama football. To me, it was encouraging to see that. Isaiah Bond broke a big one today, although A&M helped a little bit on that, leaving him open. So that is a dimension that I found fascinating today, is just that Alabama went the way that it did today and found a go-to guy with Jermaine Burton the way it did.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, just given the not know what you'd expect from the passing game this season, it's just been hard to kind of figure out who's going to emerge and have one of just that massive type game. But again, it's to have it here in this one, it's that's when you needed it. I mean, again, in this kind of environment on the road against Texas A&M, and yeah, so I mean, Alabama, like we said, I think the schedule sets up well in terms of everybody gets to come to their place now for the next month. They don't play another road game until they go to Kentucky on November the 11th. So yeah, you're at home for the next month, and it's setting up much better. Again, think about where we were after the South Florida game. They had just come off the loss to Texas, played the way they did against South Florida offensively. Sky is falling, and now they beat Ole Miss by 2 touchdowns, beat Mississippi State by 23, and won on the road at A&M. So, yep.
Yeah, and Andy talking about the Braves here.
Well, I wasn't. I didn't want to. I pulled it up on the screen, but I wasn't going to address it because I didn't think it was. Notice I didn't wear my Braves hat tonight. So
we are here for an SEC football podcast. That's what our audience is here for, or live stream. But that is the only team that I get emotionally invested in, and this was a tough night watching that between all the football. But anyway, yeah, there's always Monday. Okay, LSU's down 22-7 at one point, cannot get stops. I'm thinking this might be a rout. That is not what happened LSU's defense struggled again today, but Harold Perkins made 2 huge plays with the pick. The first one Brady Cook had thrown in, 366 attempts. To that point, Missouri had done no wrong. I think he tipped a field goal too, or a pass. There was another big play that I'd written it down, and now I've forgotten what it was. And then, of course, they get the pick six to end the game, which at that point Missouri was already down. But we've said this time and time again, LSU's defense isn't any good, or not playing like it's any good. It's certainly got some talent, but the problem is that offense. It just needs to get her a couple of stops, and that's the way that it played out today. I was having a discussion with somebody on Twitter about Jaden Daniels, and I just dropped the question of something about, if LSU lost 3 or 4 games, could he win the Heisman? He there might be a case from him as the best player in the country. Somebody argued with me, said he put up all his numbers against bad teams. I looked that up. That's not true. But hey, how about that kid today, Blake? He hurt his ribs. And you remember me saying at media day, I stood from me to the wall in front of me to him, and I was like, that kid is really thin. Just not a big frame at all. And I worried about him getting hurt. Well, that happened to him today. He hurt his ribs, came back. I think it affected his throwing a little bit, but didn't matter. Made a ton of big plays, brought them back to a big win. LSU still hanging on by a thread, I guess, for the playoff. Just hard to say how this is going to play out. But player of the day today, I think you could make a pretty good argument that it was Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how anyone could go into this game and or come out of this game thinking that Jaden Daniels was ever even close to part of the problem here.
Yeah.
He's not. Like, he is the only reason that they didn't lose this game. Didn't lose the Arkansas game. Like, I mean, it's just, he is tremendous. Like, and again, you can say he's done it against this team and that team, but I mean, LSU's given up 39 to Missouri, 55 to Ole Miss, 31 to Arkansas. They got 45 to Florida State to start the season. And, this guy just keeps putting them in a position, even with the defensive inconsistencies, which at times is putting it very lightly. He has given them, he has been able to put it on his back and just carry them to where they have a chance, no matter what. And, he's been remarkable. I mean, how did you say it? 73.1% completion percentage, 16 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. He's got 3 rushing touchdowns, almost got 300 rushing yards now, in addition to the 1,700 passing yards that he has. So, yeah, I mean, Daniels he's tremendous. Again, you can say it's against this person or that person. And sure, does it help given who's around him? And they just got ridiculous playmakers on this roster, of course. Yeah. But he's taking advantage of that. He's the one thing that he's not just putting them out there and, he's giving them a chance to succeed just like they're giving him a chance to succeed. So, yeah, that's what a quarterback does. And so, yeah, he's something else. And that's why I'm sure LSU fans are thinking, my goodness, if our defense at times just played average and not below average, like we've seen at certain stretches this season, and again, that may be putting it lightly for some of the stretches that they've played, who knows, right? And they're not out of it. I mean, that's the thing, right? With this win, they're not completely out of it. They have 2 losses, but we kind of alluded to that a couple days ago. They're not completely out of this thing. They've got Auburn next. Of course, they've got to go to Alabama, but they get Florida at home. They get Texas A&M at home. They're going to be favored in 3 of those Final 4 SEC games.
Yeah.
And they are. The Alabama game, Alabama's probably going to be favored in that one, I would say. Pretty good bet, but still, because they have Jaden Daniels, they're going to have a chance to win that game in Alabama. And, it's just a matter of where's the defense at that point. So, yeah, LSU's not out of this thing.
You know who else was maybe the most underrated piece of that game? Was Logan Diggs, because Missouri gets up, it gets that big lead, and I mean, Missouri just clicking on all the cylinders. You cannot stop Brady Cook. I thought the headline of this game was going to be Cook and Burden, and The defense slipped a little bit today, but it's LSU. That can happen to just about anybody. But I thought getting Diggs going, and he wasn't spectacular, but he was picking up first downs and doing things, keeping that defense off the field, sort of changing the tempo of the game. They had 230-yard rushers today, Daniels being one, him being the other. I thought that was a big part of what LSU did well today.
Yep. He's he's gonna be someone that's not talked about a ton just from that standpoint, because you do know that most people are gonna say, all right, well, look what Daniels did, look what Neighbors did, look what Thomas did, and so forth. But yeah, I mean, you look at Diggs, right? I mean, he's an important piece of this puzzle, because guess what? Everybody else knows what Jaden Daniels is going to try to do in the game. Everybody else knows what they have to defend with those playmakers in the passing game. And then you turn around and you look at Diggs and you're like, all right, this guy rushed for 100 yards against Ole Miss, rushes for 134 today. He scored 3 touchdowns the past 2 games. And yeah, I mean, he's a big part of this too going forward. It's just, it adds another dimension to this offense to where, like you said, it's one of those situations now where, man, they're going to have a chance against anybody they play just because of how many points they can put up, even against, like I know, like Ole Miss, defensively, and Missouri had slipped a little bit just in this scenario. But yeah, like I would feel confident about LSU even against good defenses, because this is an elite offense with a lot of different people stepping up and making plays on a game in and game out basis. We always kind of bring up the stat of just those big plays, right? Big playability in this offense. Well, once again today, it's like we got 4 guys who go for plays of 34 or more yards: Diggs, Daniels, Neighbors, Thomas. It's just how it works with this thing. And that just breaks open a game and completely changes, how you can approach things and how quickly you can turn the game. And so, yeah, I mean, that just adds another dimension to this offense. So,
All right, Blake, we're getting called out by a couple of people here, so we'll own it.
what? Hold on a second. Who's getting called out?
I am. I'll own it. I picked A&M in this game. He's right, Brock. You're right. Didn't lock it down. I didn't know. I just thought there were 2 good teams. Like some things A&M had better, but hey, look, you never count Nick Saban out. And so congrats to them. They're finding an identity on defense for sure. Offensively, that may go week to week, but he's the best coach in my mind in the history of college sports for a reason, and he is showing it. So there's that. One other one, and then we'll get to our super chatters. Chicken 1515 is doing a lot of crowing, a lot of boomer sooner. Hey, we're not ignoring what Oklahoma did today. We just are not going to dive in with both feet on Oklahoma and Texas till they're officially in the league. We're about a 2.5-man show. We try to cover the 14 teams we cover pretty well. But speaking of good games, I got to watch a little bit of that one. So congrats to the Sooners. They in Texas played a phenomenal game today. I did catch bits and pieces of that.
Yep, we will get to Oklahoma and Texas here soon enough. It's Southeastern 14 / soon to be Southeastern plus a couple. That's not going to be our name, guys. We're not going to call ourselves Southeastern plus a couple, but just letting you know. So, Chris, we've got confirmation, and we will get to Justin super chat here in a second, but we have gotten confirmation from Blaine Gilmer that the way this game is going between Georgia and Kentucky, and if you're watching this on the replay, I apologize. My guess is it still turned out this way, but Blaine is currently at the game, or maybe he's still there. Maybe he's hit the exits. Like
he can leave by now if he hasn't. This one's.
But Blaine has confirmed that he has had to shield his son's eyes from the violence that's taking place in this game right now between Georgia and Kentucky. So it's unfortunate, but it's a good teaching lesson.
Well, there was some violence done to Devin Leary. That was my concern for Kentucky. Is I thought he had it in him to play better, but we haven't seen it yet. Look, Georgia got after him. It wasn't all Leary. And then on the other side, my goodness, when we're having this player of the week discussion, I don't know if Carson Beck's going to get it because Kentucky took control of that game pretty early. My guess is your player of the week is Jaden Daniels. Could be Jalen Milroe, but my guess it's going to be Jaden Daniels. But Carson Beck, my goodness, throwing for nearly what almost 400 yards tonight, 4 touchdowns, a pick. This looks like a Georgia box score from last year where they've got 8 or 9 different people catching the ball. They don't have one dominant running back, but you look up at the end of the night, the yards per carry against Kentucky, 4.9 a carry, which is what it is that I'm looking at. That's pretty respectable against Kentucky. Did enough to keep the chains moving. Georgia came out and kind of put the hammer down, and there wasn't much doubt about who was winning this one from the first quarter on.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's look, I mean, we talked about it. Blaine kind of mentioned that too. I don't know, maybe in a text with all of us or whatever. I don't remember exactly when we talked about it, but perhaps a similar setup to which it's been different, but similar setup to the Tennessee game last year in terms of team having all the difference is team having all the momentum, but the difference I think has just been, like you said, this is that game, and we knew this is that game where it's like Georgia is always capable of this, like right here. Now we haven't seen it consistently this year, and people have been able to pick apart certain things, maybe unlike years past in some of these scenarios. But with this one, it's like, man, they're always that game away, right, from doing something like this. And yeah, I mean, it's just we've seen that in this game. I mean, Carson Beck, you mentioned how well he's played. Leary, a couple touchdowns, but the numbers still, and we knew Ray Davis was going to have a much tougher challenge, than he had last week against Florida. It was just a different scenario here, and that's why Georgia's Georgia, and that's why they're the 2-time defending champion, and that's why they haven't lost a game in forever now. And so, yeah, it's just, man, it's so hard to come into that environment, night game, which is what we said going into it. Just think about kind of the setup and everything. This is why this game always felt like it had that blowout potential, even if, again, maybe I didn't think it'd be 31, which it is as we're recording this right now. But yeah, so, all right, Chris, let's get to some super chats here with Justin. And then we will we'll wrap up here in just a little bit. But I'm going to circle back around to this because I was going to ask this question anyway.
Well, and Blake, I want to circle around to a couple more games just so people know we will hit those. We're not going to spend a lot of time on Florida Vandy and a lot of time on Mississippi State, but there were a couple things I wanted to mention out of those games today that are noteworthy.
Well, and the super chats are going to lead us right into that. So we're going to go in the order here of Justin super chats that will hit on the game we've already covered in Missouri. We didn't spend any time talking about Missouri on the other side of the LSU game, but Justin with a $2 super chat asks, is Missouri legit despite the loss? I still think Missouri's fine. I just think LSU was, it's just what LSU can do, like we said earlier. So
the two things I worry about Missouri, and maybe it's unfair to say them right now. I thought, as much as I like Missouri's defense before the season, I would have liked for them to be a little bit more statistically dominant than they had coming into today. And then against LSU, they gave it up a few times, but that happens to just about everybody. I think my bigger concern from Missouri is that Brady Cook looked a lot more mortal today. Had a couple picks, had a couple other throws that were there for the making that he just didn't make. More of the completions were on the dump down variety this week. So I think that was probably a case. I'm not saying Brady Cook's start was a fluke. I don't think that at all. I've just been super impressed at the way he played. I felt like he was playing at an A+ level for Brady Cook today, and I thought we saw that drop to more of a B with some of the mistakes. So I want to watch that going forward. But I still think that, Blake, to me, Missouri's still a top 25 team.
Interesting game next week at Kentucky, because that's a really interesting game now for both teams. Again, just kind of given the performances, and obviously one a little more extreme than the other in terms of points total, point differential. But yeah, that becomes a very interesting game to see how both teams bounce back. And then after that, remember, that's the issue for Missouri too, is the remaining schedule, is having to go to Kentucky. They still got to go to Georgia. They still got to play Tennessee. They've still got to go to Arkansas. There's South Carolina and Florida in there too. So, yeah, I think LSU, as we said, I don't think you just overreact to the LSU loss. There are some things you can take away, as Chris said, but I'm not ready to just completely say, all right, things in here for Missouri. I still think they're a very good team, as we've seen to this point. So, and we're in control of that game for a while. I mean, let's not forget that. Like they were in a position to win the game again and go to 6-0, but it just didn't turn out that way. So, all right, Chris, let's get to Vandy, Florida.
Do we have to?
Well, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this one because we're going to try to get out of here in the next little bit. But yeah, let's quickly touch on Vandy, Florida here real quick. So Justin has a couple super chats on this one, a $10 super chat, which remember, guys, you can leave that for us. It's a nice donation for the channel. You can also do what Justin has done as well, and that's join the It Just Means More membership tier. Hit that join button. You're definitely going to want to do that, and that's all I'm going to say right now because we are going to have some very interesting things membership-wise here coming soon. So if you want to be part of that, go ahead and join that It Just Means More tier, and we'll add some more information here in the near future. But Justin's $10 super chat it's very simple. Is Vandy cursed? Will Vanderbilt's coordinators survive the year? He's got a lot of questions on this. And he also adds in another $5 super chat here, Chris. Should Vandy's receivers use the John Cena, which, Chris, I'm not sure if you're familiar with. Should they use the can't see me move before each play? Would that even help? So Justin, not happy with the Commodores at this very moment.
Well, I don't think Vandy's cursed. I just think its athletic department has been poorly run for longer than a lot of you watching have been alive. And this coaching staff isn't getting it done. I do think you'll see at least one new coordinator next year for them. Yeah, I'll have to let you handle the John Cena thing because I'm out of my depth on that one.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Today's game, I thought, was one of those where I'm not surprised the way it played out, right? Like it was they're hanging in there for a little bit. Florida winds up winning the game 38-14 for those of you who didn't watch the game. But it's a tight game almost going into halftime, but then it felt like one of those situations where like you've seen this so many times with Vandy games over the years where it's you're right there with a chance and you're just trying to get to halftime, only down a touchdown, and then all of a sudden what happens, right? Florida adds on another touchdown, then it's a 2-touchdown game going into halftime. It's always that sequence that it just seems like that happens with, and especially, with this team, it's just putting together enough of those sequences to where you don't put yourself in that situation where you, again, think of how different that is for a team that's looking for anything right now to go into halftime down 14-7 versus 21-7. It's only 7 points, but that's a lot for a team, I think, that is just really struggling to find any confidence, any consistency right now. And then from there, yes, they make it stays a 2-touchdown game going to the fourth, but I still don't think you ever felt like, past that point that was kind of the turning point. And look, Florida, I here's what I thought in this one. You think about there's no Etienne, right? And we said, I think going into it, it's one of the things Vanderbilt did well last year to win that game and, pull the upset. Florida couldn't get anything going last year running game wise, whether it was Anthony Richardson, whether it was Johnson, whether it was Etienne, they couldn't get anything going. But now, Johnson goes for 135 in this one. Webb ended up going for 70. Now, they had that one long run in there. But they got that going, but Graham Mertz looked good. I mean, he just, was able pretty much to pick them apart. Like, it just didn't feel like there was much of a, what was the number? What do you go? 30 of 35,
30 of 36.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Well, look, we do yards per attempt. That's the big stat now in this day and age. But I think sometimes completion percentage is kind of important because that keeps the chains moving. And you got a couple teams, Missouri being one, Florida being another, that sometimes when the passing game works, although Cook has shown that they can really throw the deep ball. I don't know that Florida, other than Pearsall, can really do that with regularity. And even then, I would say it's probably limited. But what Mertz and Cook both do is when it's on, they're completing a lot of passes and keeping the chains moving. And I think the big stat in that game, because you look at the box score, you look at a lot of it, you'd think Florida's going to win but maybe not as lopsided as the score was. I think Vanderbilt was one of 13 on third and fourth downs today, and that was just really the story. It was just that keep drives alive, keep the clock going, and I think that's, maybe Florida's tapped into a little bit of an identity there. I don't know. Vanderbilt's defense is awful. So I hesitate to make any conclusions, but Mertz has completed I think he's been a 70% guy or higher all year. So maybe that's something you see. And look, Montreal Johnson, ETN kind of stole the show with that Tennessee game a couple of weeks ago, but people forget was he I think maybe the Sun Belt Freshman of the Year 2 years ago. They brought him in from Louisiana, had a great year. I thought he had a chance to be one of the best running backs in the league, and really those two were 1A and 1B a year ago. So, and then Florida had some guys behind him today that played well too. They just spread the ball around and got a lot of guys involved, and that was more than enough.
Yeah, I mean, those two guys are both 1,000-yard rusher type guys, and I think that was what we were talking about in our bowl predictions going into the season. Like that's just what they are. And Mertz has been, let's just call it what it is. I mean, there were some of us that were not sure what to expect from Graham Mertz, but he's been much better than I think a lot of people expect him to be in terms of just efficiency at this point. And yeah, so I mean, that was the kind of performance I think you wanted to see from Florida. Although there was some unhappiness, like you heard the fans booing. What was that early in the game, and they were getting a little restless. But once they got going, I mean, there are some things that Florida still has to fix. By no means just winning by 24 against Vanderbilt solved some of those areas, but it was at least something right after losing the way they did at Kentucky last week. So, speaking of Kentucky, this thing's 51-13 now.
Ooh.
Unreal. So yeah, I think you look at it from that standpoint. But here's the other deal. We talked about last year, Vandy's given up 30-something or more points in the last how many seasons it's been. I mean, think about what they've given up. Take out the Alabama A&M game. We're not counting that one. They've given up 28 to Hawaii, 36 to Wake Forest, 40 to UNLV, 45 to Kentucky, 38 to Missouri, 38 to Florida. You are not winning games. Like, it's just that.
And you hired a defensive coordinator as your coach. Year 3, it ought to be much better than that.
Well, here's the problem.
Maybe not much better, but better. My goodness.
Here's a problem.
I know they still got a talent deficit that's huge, but still.
How do they give up less than 40 against Georgia next week and then at Ole Miss the following after the bye?
Spoiler alert, they don't.
So I'm sorry, Justin. $5 super chat asking if any teams are accepting new fans. There's a lot for you people in the chat. Please send your best offer to Justin. He's looking for a new team here. And I hate to be that way, but like it's got to be frustrating. I mean, Vanderbilt fans, we know, frustrating in football for many years. With some ups along the way, but yeah, I
don't know that school will ever make the wholesale changes to do the tough things it needs to do to win ball games. I know the facilities are going to be nice, and I get that, but at this rate, all it's going to be is, a plush visiting environment for all the fans you want to bring.
Blaine says Florida's identity is that they played good against teams that can't stop the run. Otherwise, they are hot dog water. So, meanwhile,
Tennessee can't stop the run?
Well,
I think the jury's out on that.
Meanwhile, we have not talked about this game, and just so everyone knows, we are doing this like a little earlier than we usually do it, just from a scheduling perspective. But Arkansas is taking the lead on Ole Miss here in the fourth, and so that is a game we'll talk more about on Monday. So just letting Arkansas and Ole Miss fans know, we will talk about that game on Monday. Blaine will talk about it in the morning report. We'll talk about it on the Daily Show. So don't fear. Just remember, we are doing this live on Saturday, and we're doing it a little earlier than we usually do. So we probably won't get any thoughts on that game, unless, Chris, you want to give some thoughts of what you've seen to this point. But in terms of the finish, still to be decided there as we're recording. So
yeah, I haven't seen much of this. My attention was divided between Kentucky, Georgia, and the Braves. I'm going to watch every bit of this from here on out, and I've had it on, but not a lot's happened, although Arkansas just went up as we're doing this a few minutes ago. I did want to mention one game that has finished we haven't talked about. We're not going to a lot, but I think there were a couple of significant things that came out of this today. Will Rogers left that Mississippi State game. The State beat Western Michigan. They left that one early, and his left shoulder was dragging. He's a right-handed thrower. But if you got a bad shoulder problem, it's better. I guess it's not your throwing shoulder, but he was out of pads before that game was over. And I think they said, Woody Marks was in a walking boot. So that's their quarterback and their best running back. And oh, by the way, the defense leaked again today. I'm gonna don't kill me if I'm wrong about this, anybody, but I think they said Western Michigan was down to its third quarterback. That kid had a bit of a field day. Their State's defense still is not getting stops, and now we'll be interested to see whether they are down with Rogers for any length of time.
Well, the
We're
Marks
off next week, by the way.
I was gonna say Marks wasn't a walking boot, so that is something I definitely saw that. So yeah, I mean, that's not good. So hopefully, again, they do, and that's why I was pulling up their schedule, because I'm like, I know they get an off week next week, but then, talking about a grind of a schedule at Arkansas, at Auburn, home against Kentucky, at A&M. After that, that's 4 straight. Oof, that's brutal. So yeah, so definitely the bye week at least comes at the right time, right, for Mississippi State, given those 2 injuries. So we'll see what the extent is of that. But yeah, 41-28 win for Mississippi State in that one, the only non-conference game this week. But yeah, so we'll see what happens. But I did watch a bit of that. I didn't take a lot away, other than just, like you said, the injuries, I think, are the most notable storyline now coming out of this one. So
wrapping it up, I'm trying to think of what nationally affected the SEC today. Obviously, Texas, Oklahoma. I think Texas would have. Well, I think of the 2 teams, I would have handicapped Texas to get a bigger boost. Well, I mean, either team was going to get a big boost from this win. I guess what I'm trying to say, Texas had a much better resume coming in than Oklahoma. Oklahoma had beat much of anybody. So that shuffles the deck a little bit more. Ohio State trailed Maryland early, but came back and got that one. Fresno State, for whatever that's worth, probably going to fall from the ranks of the unbeaten to my Wyoming Cowboys.
I know there's a lot of people asking about that one, Chris, in our SEC football reaction video.
I don't leave anything off the table. In what is a weird season, until you've got a one to the right of that dash, everybody's who's unbeaten is maybe still technically in it, even if it's a 1% chance. But yeah, I know many of you circle that one as one we talk about for sure. Liberty won last night, stayed unbeaten, by the way, for whatever that's worth too. What else is worth discussion here that we haven't gotten to, either in the SEC or as it affects the SEC?
Well, it's not that we haven't gotten to it, but we did start this, basically as the fourth quarter was starting. But just coming out of this and just remembering that, for all the discussion about Georgia, if you want to see what they can do when they turn it on, like this, watch the 4 quarters that they just played against Kentucky. And it's never been an issue of talent. It's never been any of that this season. We can poke apart stuff. I saw it. I'm not going to pull it up. But yeah, like this is what they've been like under Kirby Smart now. Like this is what we expect. And it felt like we were just all waiting to get this game. Like this kind of game right here is what everyone was waiting on before, because we're always looking for reasons to kind of jump off the band. Like we're looking for reasons to end the streak, right, Chris? Like everybody was looking for reasons to call off the Alabama football success. It was all over after the Texas loss. But what have they done? Nick Saban has regrouped. They've come out playing good football. They've gotten a couple big wins now in the past 3 weeks, beating Ole Miss, beating A&M, and now it's like, here's Georgia. yes, they had a close call last week against Auburn, but now they regroup, they come back home here, and they put it to Kentucky. And now that's the scary thing. Is like, what does this do for them now moving forward? Now that they've got this game under their belt, the one we've all been waiting for this season. Look out, because they get Vanderbilt up next. That won't be pretty for the Commodores. They go to where they go. They got Florida and Jacksonville. They host Missouri, host Ole Miss. Still got to go to Tennessee, but that is a nice way. I think the schedule sets up for Georgia here. And yeah, this was, if you're a Georgia fan, this is pretty much everything you wanted it to be. In terms of, this is what you've been wanting to see from this team. And Carson Beck too. Like, not to say that, we've said he's been better, I think, than people have given him credit for, but this is the kind of game where it's like, Georgia's still pretty good, folks. So
to answer Isaiah's question, yes, Missouri was unbeaten, Kentucky was unbeaten. Both those went down Saturday.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, Alabama's got, here's a rarity. When's the last time you saw an SEC team play 3 straight league games at home?
I know.
That doesn't happen often.
Schedule sets up nicely for Bama. This was I think just that, again, given the way the schedule fell, how they've turned things around since that South Florida performance, like it was the right time. And so, what do you know? We're talking about Georgia and Alabama leading the way, Chris, in SEC football right now, based on some of their recent performances. So
we got Tennessee, Alabama next week.
It's not next week, is it?
No, you're right.
I was saying it's not the third Saturday in October yet.
Alabama's got Arkansas. Sorry.
Yeah. So, yeah. A&M and Tennessee, though. It's an interesting one for the Aggies now.
Yeah, let's see. What else have we got? Kentucky, Missouri will be interesting just to see how they bounce back. Tennessee A&M will be interesting for a number of reasons. Auburn LSU stylistically, I think, is going to be interesting. To Blaine's question, did you hear who ESPN was hyping up for the Heisman a little bit tonight? I don't think they're wrong.
Who?
Brock Bowers. Now, I don't think he's going to have the numbers to win it, but I think Blaine might be naming the wrong Georgia player. I don't know, though.
Well, for those listening on audio, Blaine is asking if Carson Beck will move to the top 5 in the country, or he's saying Carson Beck will move in the top 5 in country in passing after this game. Is he a Heisman contender? I'm going to say hopefully, because I think that was my bold prediction for Georgia. I think we all did bold prediction. I think that was mine for Georgia. I said Carson Beck was going to be in the Heisman race at the end of the season. So hopefully he moves into that, but we'll see. All right, Chris, we're going to wrap it up. As we said, guys, be sure to check out everything we got on the channel. We'll have a lot of thoughts. Arkansas Ole Miss on Monday starts with the morning report with Blaine. We'll go into it on the SEC Football Daily Show at 11 a.m. Central. So for fan bases, both of those, one of you will be excited to hear about that. One won't. But be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can check it out. Also, check out our friends at CHOMPS. Use the promo code SC14. Go to the description there. Click on that link. You get 15% off your first CHOMPS order. Great snack if you want to be finding some snacks to eat during these games. You can do that. Anything else, advertising, sponsorship-wise, send that on over to caroline.smith at southeastern14.com. But, Chris, we are going to do this. Predict the line for Georgia versus Vandy. I'm going to go ahead and give it to you right now because I'm pretty sure I have at least
I've got a
something
guess. I want to hear how close I am.
All right. What's your guess?
I'm going to guess 35, and if I'm wrong, I'm going to guess I'm low.
Okay. Well, I don't think I have it yet. My guess is we'll know here in a little while. But you're going to say 35?
Uh-huh.
I think it's going to be higher than that. But we'll see what it is.
I would say 35 to 38.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's going to be higher than 35 for a variety of reasons. So we'll see. We'll play the lines soon. But again, guys, we have our predictions going up for all the games. We put those up on Mondays early in the week, give you our initial thoughts on everything. And So we have game previews and all that. So we appreciate you watching here as always. And Chris, we can wrap it up.
Yeah, thanks to everybody for watching. We'll be back at it on Monday, and we'll have our Monday show. We'll also do our predictions. So thanks to you all for watching. God bless you. God bless the Braves.
Goodness.
Keep Max Fried's finger healthy, please. And we'll see you guys Monday.